Publishing for Profit podcast is brought to you by Ghostwriters & Co. Earn more money by publishing better content and learn how to increase your thought leadership so you can build your brand. Head over to ghostwritersandco.com for more information. That's ghostwritersandco.com. And now, your host, Joel Mark Harris.
Hello and welcome to the Publishing for Profit podcast. This is your host, Joel Mark Harris. Today we are talking to Aaron De Souza, who is a dating coach for women. Aaron talks about his entrepreneurial journey, how he started his business. We talk a lot about the skills you need to find the perfect date. And although that may seem like a very strange subject to talk about on this podcast, it's actually very applicable to wherever you are in life and business. As you will hear, Aaron has a stutter, which he has battled since he was at an early age. He joined Toastmasters to overcome his social anxiety and to become a better communicator. One of his highlights was to speak in front of over 300 people. So as you can tell, he became quite an effective communicator. Aaron's words will surely inspire you and they will help you in whatever challenges that you are facing in your journey today. So without further ado, here is I talk with Aaron. Aaron, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you?
I'm great, Joe. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, it's great to reconnect after I don't know. It's been a while, and I was kind of thinking back to because I've known you. I feel like I've known you forever. But we met at Toastmasters, which we will be talking about later,
Right.
and some of the fond memories there. But
Absolutely.
I want to start off with your dating coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to, I don't know, honestly, I don't know much about, I've never hired a dating coach, although I probably could have used one back when I was single. But what is a dating coach?
I would say a dating coach has three main features. I think the first one, if someone has reached out to them saying that, you know what, we have some challenges in our dating life. The three main features of dating coach are: one, they need to identify what the challenges are, not just at the surface level, but at a deep level, because everyone is unique. So the first one is identifying their challenges and what they want. The second big feature of dating coach is how they help their client develop skill, because dating is about developing skills, right, to ultimately get what you want. So that's the second feature. And the third feature is doing their best to make sure that the client gets the result, right? Because that's the ultimate goal of any coach, whether it's dating or sports or whatever field that you're in. The goal of the coach is to help you get a result. So those three features, I would say, first one, to help the client identify what they want and what their challenges are. Second is to help them build skills that will help them get what they want. And the third is to help them make sure that they actually get what they want. So those three features make up what a good dating coach does.
Yes, you always need to get the results in anything really. So what can you walk me through, like, what is a typical client, like if because I know you work primarily with women or exclusively with women, if a woman comes to you and says, I need help in my dating life, I'm not getting anywhere, what does that process look like?
I have overall set process, right? So it's 4 to 5 steps, depending on who I'm with. The first one is, as I had mentioned, getting to know the client, or my friend, because I've mostly been coaching my female friends over the past few years. It's getting a very clear understanding of what they want and what their challenges are. So, as an example, a big challenge that many of my female friends have shared with me is that, we're part of this social group, and there's this guy that we like, but he has not taken any action to ask us out for a first date, and now it's been months and we still like him. What should we do? So that's a very basic one. And then my goal now is to help them build skill. So that's the second step, is to help them see that, you know what, it's totally fine for you to actually be the one to go up to him and be like, you know what, I'd like to meet you for coffee or lunch or phone call. And that's actually quite a big step for most women, because they believe that it's the man who has to make the first move. So it's my job as a coach to be like, you know what, that may have worked in the 50s and 60s, but now we are in the 2010s. This is now the year 2021. The rules have changed, and you can go up and be like, and be proactive. And then now the goal is to keep up with this process, right? It's not a linear process. Some women progress faster than others, but the goal is to now keep identifying sticking points, develop skills, and make forward progress towards the ultimate goal, which could be getting into a relationship.
I think for me, the hardest point would be getting clear on what you really want, because I think it sounds easy, but it is probably the biggest hurdle, to me at least, and obviously you might have a different opinion, and seeing you know, through your coaching you might have seen something different, but for me at least, it seems like the biggest challenge is like getting really clear about what you want. Like, do you really want that, 3-bedroom mansion on the seaside with the 3.4 kids, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that your process is amazing, because we all think that we want the same thing, but when we dig deep, we realize, like, actually that stuff doesn't really matter to me all that much, or maybe it really does, I don't know. But and then I guess, working backwards from that. So how do you, because I think people give that stock answer, oh yes, I want the big house, I want the family. But I think, because we have such societal pressures on us that especially with women, they must have kids, right? That seems to be a common theme in society. But probably a lot of women, they're probably, and I'm just kind of speaking from my own experience, and you have obviously a lot more experience in this than I do. But, how do you get deep into what they want and find out what their true nature actually is?
One thing I've found with women in particular is that a lot of them know what they don't want. So they're actually very clear. I've heard now so many women say, you know what, I'm very clear on what I don't want. So I usually start from there. I was like, okay, fine. You seem so clear on what you don't want. Let's start with that. So let's build that list. Let's say she says that I don't want a guy who lives with his parents. Simple. We start from there. I don't want a guy who does not work full time, right? So now we've got some clarity, and now sometimes it's the opposite of what they don't want. Okay, fine. You don't want a guy who lives with his parents, but do you is it fine if he lives with roommates? then they're like, no, we don't want that. And then, okay, so what do you want? Then they say, okay, fine, I want a guy who lives on his own. Right? So now we got some more clarity on that, and now we could definitely go deeper. Do you want a guy who's renting, a guy who has a mortgage? So you can go deeper and deeper and deeper until they're like, you know what? Yes, I do want a guy who has a mortgage that will be paid off in 40 years, right? So you could go. So that's a good way of doing it, is just try to flip what they don't want into what they do want. And I've found that the role of a coach is to hold that space for them to just think out loud, right? And once they get on that flow of verbalizing, then I just keep on going deeper and deeper and deeper until they have a strong emotional response. And then we know that, you know what, they've reached sufficient clarity on that point. So we do this with health, career, finances, vision, hobbies, fitness, travel, the major parts of life. We go through this list and figure out what they want in all of those major areas.
I think that's amazing. So I think this is a good segue. When I was doing some research for this podcast, I came across another interview you did where you had to go through that same process where you were working with a coach. Correct. And they were saying, and you were saying yes to all these social engagements that you didn't really care about, and you weren't being true to your own feelings, it seems like. And so I think saying no to what you don't want is super powerful, and it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or anyone. Saying no to what you don't want is like I said, super powerful, and it really like you said, it clears the space to get what you want. So can you talk about your journey in saying no and the power that gave you?
So my journey about saying no, I will limit it for now to dating, because saying no is
it is a big topic.
It's a big topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for now, a bit of quick background about my journey towards becoming a dating coach. I had my first relationship at 31 years old, so very late compared to any standards. And I think society sees saying no as being bad, because saying no means that you're being selfish, right? And being selfish is frowned upon, because we as human beings, we want to be generous, right? Which means saying yes, and not saying no until, in my case, you say yes to, it wasn't just what I did not want, it was what I could get. So those two things are like close cousins. People settle for what they can get, right? So in my social circle and through the avenues that I was using to meet women on dates, there were certain matches that I didn't really feel it, right? I did not feel it. I was like, yes, you're a great friend, but I don't want to take this further into dating. But I would fall into that trap multiple times, right? I'd be like, okay, fine, she's here and she seems friendly. Let's keep hanging out with her, right? And now you're in this space where you're not sure if you're just being friends or if there's something more. But to me, it was just the matter of, it's what I could get. I was like, okay, fine, she's here. She's not feeling threatened by me. She doesn't think that I'm some creep. So just just keep that going because it felt better than not having anything, right? So I wasted, I wouldn't say wasted, but my ability to not say no to what I could get and what was easily accessible, it really meant that I didn't make use of a big chunk of my 20s. That's when at 30, I was like, you know what, this clearly is not working, and I have to raise my standards. And that then led me to my coach, and then the whole the standard of saying no to what you don't want, even when it's fairly easy to get.
Mhm. And so what did that clear the way for you?
It cleared the way in terms of social space and in terms of just time. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're going to say yes to things that you just can get, but you don't really want, it's time. It's time to dress up. It's time to actually go somewhere. It's time to actually really talk, and you're investing your mental and emotional energy, which are not which are resources that do get depleted, right? So if you're investing so much of your time and energy into meeting a date that you know will never go beyond just friends, that takes away from investing that same time into meeting someone who could be 10 times more compatible.
Mm. And so can you talk a little bit about how you got started into the profession? Because like I said, I don't know much about the profession. I don't think, I don't really know any dating coaches. So what drew you to the profession and how did you get started?
I got started by first hiring my own coach, right? So when I turned 30, I was like, you know what, I haven't got the results that I wanted, and now I do want to get the results. So I hired this coach. His name is Alan Roger Curry, based in the US, and I've been following his work for some time, but he was extremely provocative, right? He was that one coach which went completely against the conventional advice, and I was like, you know what, I've followed the traditional and conventional coaches. I haven't tried him, and he seems super provocative and edgy, but let's give him a go. So that was my first start. After a few months of Skype coaching with him, I know I started seeing results. I started feeling way better saying no. I felt way better sharing what I wanted pretty much on the first date, right? And those were like very new things for me to actually share. You know what? I want to now date, and I don't want to commit yet. And saying that on the first date was very new to me. So once I started transforming, I think women in my social circle picked up that I was doing something different, and through Toastmasters, I used to share my journey on stage, right? I used to use examples of this coaching session that I had with my coach. So people knew that, you know what, I was pretty public about hiring a dating coach, which you don't hear many men say that you're actually working with a dating coach. So I think that built up a trust in women for them to come to me now to be like, hey, I need to ask you a question. I met this guy and blah blah blah. What's next? What's next? And this kept on happening pretty regularly. right? So every month, I'd say since the August or September of 2017, every month I'd have one woman from my social circle come up to me and be like, you know what, we need your help, Let's sit for coffee, and then they'd go into it. Or we have this guy, or we met this guy, or I've been single for so long and I want to change that. And then I think it was early 2019 when one of my friends said, you know what, you actually give very good dating advice. I want to pay you. Right? So she just said, yeah, I just wanted to pay you some money.
That's
I want to
awesome.
pay you some money. Yeah. I said, you actually saved me a lot of time, and you cleared up some confusion. And it was just like $50, but to me, I still, you know what, she voluntarily paid me, which is quite rare. It's quite rare. So that was when I was like, you know what, this could be something that I could commit to. And then it was at the end of it was the fall of 2019 when the sales contract had just abruptly ended. And I was like, you know what, what's next? I was like, oh, you know what, what's next might be just becoming a dating coach for women. So that's how I got started on this path, where it was first hiring a coach for my own life, and then seeing women respond to that, them seeing me transform, and me getting that first relationship, and the friend who paid me, and then now we've reached this point where it's my main business focus.
And so, what is the difference between women and men in terms of dating, and why did you choose to focus solely on women?
So one reason why I focused. So first, I will respond to the question on why I focus on women, and then I'll respond to the main differences. So my coach is exclusively a coach for men, right? So he focuses mainly on men, and his method, he spent decades to actually perfect it, and he wants to train his coaches. And to me, it seemed fair that I actually invest in his training. So he won't be ready to train men in his method for at least the next year. So to me, I was like, you know what, I will just refer men to him. So that's the agreement that we reached. I was like, I want coach men. I will refer them to him because he's been doing this for the past like 30 years, right? So he has way more experience coaching men. So we did that, and then I was like, you know what, I'll stick with the women because they've been coming to me because I would have never thought I would have reached this point doing this work. But as I saw women getting results with my advice, I said, why not? So that's how I focus on women. But the future goal is to coach both men and women. Okay, and now comes to the differences. So men are often told to be the ones who need to be more proactive, right? You have to go approach, get rejected. That seems to be the standard model until the one says yes, and you don't know how long that is going to take. And so that's one very conventional difference is that the woman waits for the man to come to her. What I've found that in the relationships that I've seen to be successful, and in my own personal experience, the woman is as much or sometimes even more proactive in that initial stage, and that was quite startling to me. Is that the best matches is where it's more 50-50, is that the woman shows signs of interest, and not just passively but quite actively in showing the man that she wants to take this further in the romantic direction. Yeah, so that's one difference that I was pleasantly surprised to uncover, is that in the best matches it's more 50-50. Yeah.
Interesting. And so how, I mean, dating life, I have a cousin who's single, and dating life has changed drastically with COVID, right? Because you can't obviously, or you're not supposed to, in many cases, not supposed to see anybody outside your household. So what sort of advice would you give to somebody who's dating now that we're in COVID times?
Yeah, so my first one is, wherever you are, definitely obey the restriction rules wherever you're at. So that's step one, because COVID is, I mean, we really need to respect it and what it can do. But there have been a lot of benefits, because I have been quite active on the dating sites myself during these past 12 months. And I would say leverage it to your benefit. I think phone calls, definitely pick up the phone to get to know someone. I think phone calls are great at preventing distractions, because it's just voice to voice. You don't have to animate your whole physical self. So I think practice getting to the point, right? I think one of my favorite questions to ask women on the phone is, what do you want? What do you want? You're on this site and you've mentioned these things on your profile. Share some more. Share some more specifics. And this is what I tell my clients too. Ask the man what he wants within the first 5 minutes. Like, don't think that you need to build up this whole buffer of fluff talk, about work, about travel, about this, about that. I mean, that you just end up wasting so much time. So use this chance now that you're home to develop your conversational skills. Build some courage by asking the very important questions. And if you're more comfortable using Zoom or Skype for virtual dates, where you actually see them on video, do that. Yeah, and one thing that most people don't use enough is virtual speed dating. That's actually a great way to actually meet like 6 to 8 singles in the span of 60 minutes. The speed date is just 5 to 6 minutes long, but it's a great way to meet a bunch of new people who are there for the purpose of dating.
Oh, well, yeah, didn't think about that, but that's good advice.
Yeah.
And how about with entrepreneurs, especially, they're so, work is so it's involved, and they're so much in their building their business, and they're working long hours. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs who still want to build the business but are also trying to date and find a life partner?
I would say first, give some deep thought about your journey, say 5 to 10 years, right? And just think about what you want that journey to look and feel like with a partner and without, right? So think deeply, because you can end up regretting putting so much time into your business and having a very unbalanced and unfulfilling life if now you spend 5 to 10 years putting so much time into your business, and then you've had this beautiful important part of our lives, uh, our happiness, our emotional health, sex, romance depends so much on having these romantic partners. And I've found that they really help balance out and help us make better decisions in our businesses, because we just feel better, right? And we have to manage our time better, because we cannot spend 12 to 16 hours per day for like years. When you have a partner. So I really think that entrepreneurs need to have a very good response to why they don't want a partner, which is not the standard. I don't have time for it. I think that's a very lazy response. It's cliche. It's lazy. It's a response which does not get you so far. And from what I have seen, those ones tend to not have long-term sustained success. They burn out, right? They burn out because relationships are a very key and foundational part of our lives, right? It's similar to health. I mean, would an entrepreneurs say that, you know what, I just want to not focus on my health and fitness for the next 5 years? It just makes no sense. It makes no sense. You wouldn't ignore your health for the next 5 years because you have so much time to put into your business. It just seems so ridiculous, right? And so to me, saying that, for the next 1 to 5 or 10 years, you don't want to focus on a relationship, it sounds as ridiculous as saying that you don't want to focus on your health and fitness for the same amount of time.
And
Yeah.
I think going back to the question about asking what you want, say, like in the first date, or like in the first couple minutes of talking to somebody, I think that's really key, because it really does get to the heart of the matter. And I'm curious, when you ask that question, are people taken back by it? Because I think we are used to, as a society, to the small talk about, talking about the weather for the first 5 minutes and then talking about sports teams, right? So have you had real good success with that question?
So there's a two-part response to that. So the first one is that making a significant change to how you date is a skill, right? So the first this took me a good 1 year, right? A good 1 year to develop the skill of being able to change my entire dating strategy. So say for the first 3 months, the first 3 to 4 months of those 12 months, I was pretty bad. So it was pretty bad, right? So the first
Takes practice, like
yeah,
anything,
it
right?
practice. There
Yeah.
you go, right? So for the first 3 to 4 months, I'd be like, hey, you know what do you want? And they'll be like, there will be this pause, right? You'd be like, oh, this is, you would know, you would feel it. She's like, oh, this is just so abrupt, right?
Yeah.
There was no like build up to it. I'll just be like, hey, or I'll just like transition to what do you want? And then she's like, oh yeah, I just want a nice guy who makes me laugh, blah blah blah. It'd be super vague response. So the first 4 months want that graceful, but this is fine because it's a new skill, right? You have to give yourself that. You have to give yourself a break to realize this is a very new skill and it won't be that good. But that's fine because now in the last 3 months of that 12-month period, I was now much better. So now the woman would not respond with this feeling of, oh, this guy seems to be a really amateurish. Now she would be like, oh wow, this guy really knows what he wants. He really knows how to date, right? Because now I would ask the question in a much more graceful manner. So yes, it would still be like 5 to 10 minutes into a first date, but now it would be a very smooth transition. I'd be like, hey, you know what do you want? And then yeah, it was just a completely different reaction, both on the mental and emotional levels, and now a very different response from her too. Yeah.
And so would
Yeah.
you
So
get a better quality answer as well? Because I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because now I was owning my own space and I gave her that space too, right? And this you only reach that level once you've had that deliberate practice, right? So this was a full 12 months, right? So now I could hold that space for her to give a much more thoughtful response than the generic, oh, I want a nice guy who has a good career and makes me laugh. That's the worst response you could get, right? It's so vague.
Yeah.
But now that I could hold the space, and sometimes I would ask them further questions. So, what do you mean by good career? Or do you want to date an employee, or do you want to date an entrepreneur? Because I'm clearly an entrepreneur, and it's going to be a roller coaster ride if we date. So it led to much deeper levels of sharing very fast, which really surprised me. So the quality of my dates now were like 10 times better than at the start of developing that skill.
So you talk a lot about dating skills, and I've never really thought about dating as a skill before. And a lot of people acquaint dating with sales skills, and that's a comparison that we make a lot. Would you say those two skill sets are similar?
Definitely similar in that I think conventionally we both dating and sales are seen as good until you get to the point, right? In terms of sales, right? And that point in sales, you get to the point of, do you want to make a purchase, which involves your potential client spending money, right? So sales is fine until you reach that decision point. Do you want to go forward with the sale or not? And that's sort of the 80% of what makes sales uncomfortable or frowned upon, is that decision point. Similar with dating, it's all fine for speaking about travel, work, this, that. It's all fine until it comes to that point of, do you want to meet on a second date? Do you want to now go for sex? Do you want to do you want to take that next step forward? Right. So those are the similarities between dating and sales. It's all fine until that decision point.
Yes, until the closing point. Yeah,
Until the closing
question.
point, absolutely.
Yeah.
The closing question, what's next?
Yes, next. Yeah.
And you are very afraid to hear no. You're very
Yeah.
yeah.
I hear ya.
You're very, very afraid to hear no, because now, well, it's rejection, right? And rejection is such a big part of dating that we're so afraid of someone saying no. No.
I kind of dig a little bit deeper on that, because I think that's an
Absolutely.
important point. Because
Absolutely.
does hearing no get easier? Because obviously myself being an entrepreneur and hearing no a lot, it never gets easier. I still feel like that sinking feeling in my chest of like, oh, I've been rejected, even if it's like a client I don't particularly want. It's weird. It's that feeling of just being there. I'm not good enough, right? And I'm wondering if that gets easier with practice, or if there's a skill set you can learn in order to overcome that.
I think we could do an entire podcast.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back.
This topic, Joel. Yeah, rejection is such a big topic. But let me share a couple of things that have really helped me turn it on its head. So much so that when I get rejected, so now I'll just limit it to dating. Sometimes rejection has left me feeling better than yes. And what changed was one, thinking about how I was getting rejected. How do you get rejected? I found that when I wasn't upfront and straightforward with what I wanted, and say I go on these 3 dates, and now I haven't told her my true feelings, right? I haven't said, you know what, I think you're sexy, or I think you have a great mind, or whatever I should feel. When I haven't shared that, and she has sensed that I feel that, and now she has brought it up before I have, right? So she says that, you know what, we've been on these few dates. I think you like me, but I don't like you. When she's the one who makes that first move, those have been the absolute worst. Those have been the absolute worst, because now I was like, you know what, I felt like sharing my true feelings with her from the very first date, right? I really felt good with her. I really wanted to share them with her, but I did not. So if you get rejected because, one, you knew what you wanted to say, but you delayed saying it, and now the other person has sensed what you wanted to say, and now they have said it before you did, those are very, very bad, right? So those, I would say, universally, for men or women, whether it's dating or sales, those are probably the worst, because you have not exercised your courage to share what you want. Okay, so and now on the flip side, when I would get rejected, when I actually would share it, you know what, I think you're cute, and I'd like to meet you on second date, like saying this at the end of the first date. And if she said no, I would feel so much better now, right? Because I said what I wanted, right? And of course, it's again, dealing with rejection too is a skill, right? Is a skill too, right? So for me, the first times I would say it and I would get rejected, it wouldn't feel good. But then you do this a few dozen times, and now you've built up the skill. And you're like, you know what? It's fine because I shared my truth. I exercised my courage, right? And you feel good now. You feel good, and the person tends to reject you much more gracefully too, right? They actually give you a very good response, right? They sometimes tell you why, right? Because I think a big part of the sting of rejection is that we don't know why, right?
That's
But
true. Yeah.
you don't know
That's a
why
big
the
point.
person
Yeah.
reject exactly,
Yeah.
like because sometimes she's like, you know what, I'm just not ready. That's it. Like because so it might not have anything to do with you, right? So to me, I was like, oh, so that's one big one is how you get rejected, and then the second reframe was my relationship with rejection. This was a big one because now I'm not just thinking about the act of getting rejected. It was what is my relationship with this thing called rejection, right? So I've done a lot of journaling, and to me, I now see rejection as a very compassionate friend. I was like, rejection says that, you know what, you were bold, you were courageous, and you're honoring someone's time, right? By being direct, right? So I see my relationship with rejection as a very compassionate friend, which is here to have compassion for me and the person I share my true desires with. Yeah,
You mentioned journaling. Is that something that you do often?
I do every single day. I do it every single day. I see journaling as more a solving tool more than diary, right? So I think I've used it so much, Joel. I've used it to write down specific lines to use for first day. I would actually write down specific
That's smart.
lines,
No,
right? It's
that's
super
brilliant.
smart. Yeah,
That's a great tactic. Yeah.
it may seem dorky or nerdy, but it helps. It helps clarify your thinking. And to me, I've done this with even choosing whether I want to ask a woman out for first date. I was like, do I want to ask her out for first date? And sometimes the response was no. No, you don't. So I definitely encourage your listeners to definitely journal about like very basic questions and see journaling as a skill too. It seems to be this
It's
the
the
whole
theme, right? Yeah.
theme of this. Everything seems to be a skill. So journaling is a skill as well. No.
So I want to shift to Toastmasters because, as I alluded to, that's where we met.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit
Yes.
about your Toastmasters journey?
Sure. I'm sure it's been a bit obvious on this podcast that I do have a stutter, right? I sometimes pause, sometimes the words do not come out when I want them to. So I developed this stutter when I was 9 years old. So since 9, it was way more severe then. And from 9 until 24, 25, so good 16, 17 years, I really had a lot of social anxiety and this fear of just talking, because I would not be able to string a full fluent sentence, right? There would be the like words seem just stuck. So around 25, I was like, you know what? I don't want this stutter to hold me back, because I do want to go into the world and interact with human beings, and I do want to be able to talk to them, right? Because we live in a social world, right? So at that point, I made the choice that, you know what, whether I stutter or not, I'm going to go out, right? So it was this greater goal of going out and being more social, and of course, dating was a big part, because to me, I was so fearful of even going on a date, because which woman would want to date a guy who stutters? And most movies I had watched till then, stutterers in movies were like seen as total losers, right? They were complete losers. So I was like, you know what? That was the perception I had of myself too. And then it was the King's Speech. The King's Speech was the first movie which I really loved that movie. It was so beautifully done, and for like me being a stutterer, it was just so beautifully done. So it's one of, yeah, it was really showed, you know what, stutter does not define you, right? I think that was a big lesson that I learned. And the same year that that movie came out, I also went through speech therapy. This was in 2010. In 2010, and in and since then I was like, yeah, I want to go out. I definitely want to network more. I want to date more. And then I was like, you know what? Let's take on a bigger challenge. Let's go on stage, and that's how I joined Toastmasters in 20. It was the August of 2013. But of course, I had been visiting Toastmasters clubs a few years prior, but I finally made the commitment to join in the August of 2013. Yeah.
So we talked a lot about fear before. I can only imagine the fear that you felt, because I know I've done the same thing, but I think that with a stutter, it'd be so much more difficult. So how do you, how did you cope with that fear of coming from pretty much having that social anxiety all the way to talking in front of a large crowd?
I think you know my drift by now, Joe. It was a skill. It was a skill again. So overcoming social anxiety was a skill, right? So it started out with I would say the speech therapy clinic. At the end of those 10 days, it was 10 days with 10 hours of speaking very, very slowly, so that you don't stutter. Once you do like 100 hours of speaking so slow, you end up completely fluent. So I was completely fluent for the first time in my life, right? And see now, once I lower my rate, I tend to become much more fluent. So I will, I'll speak slightly at slightly lower rate from now on. Yes. So now this meant that, I had some more courage, right? So now I would go out for more networking events. I'd pick up the phone some more. So making phone calls, I was deathly afraid, because now when I had to say my name was one of the most difficult words to say. I'd be like, and there'll be this long pause, right? As to, and they were like, "Oh, what's wrong with this guy? He's not saying his name." And sometimes I would have to spell it out, right? It's Aaron, and then, but that helped develop the skill of, what, it's fine. So what if I stutter, right? So then my courage reached the point where I reached the point where social anxiety did not hold me back from going out to a group like Toastmasters. So for 3 years, from the end of 2010 to the August of 2013, I just visited many Toastmasters groups, like 10 of them, right? I just go as a guest. Simple. Now I reached the point in 2013 where I was like, you know what? Let's commit to it. Let's give one speech, right? You can manage that. You could give one freaking speech, right? Or just give one speech. And now I was surprised to learn that I was more fluent on stage than I was in a conversation. The reason why being is that stutterers, when they speak to themselves, they are mostly fluent. They speak very fluently because there's no pressure, right? So to me, my safe space over the years has been talking to myself, right? Because that's when I was fluent. And now when I am on stage, it's similar to talking to myself, because I don't have to respond. I don't have to change my rate. I don't have to go faster. I don't have to switch words. That's one thing that stutterers tend to do a lot, is switch words, right? So sometimes I want to say the word car, but because I know that I will stutter on the word car, I'll say the word vehicle, right? Yeah. So now when I was on stage, I didn't have to respond to someone speaking much faster. I could slow down. I could use exactly the words that I had prepared for. So I felt really good being on stage, because I could be fluent on stage, and too, that public speaking gives you this high, right? It feels good. It feels good because you have these people who are on your side. That was a big reframe. That and Toastmasters is great because the people want you to succeed. So yes, there were speeches where I did stutter, but it was fine because the Toastmasters want to see you succeed.
What are some, if any, unexpected skills that you got from Toastmasters? Since skills is obviously a theme of this podcast.
It absolutely is. A big life skill is the skill of receiving feedback. That's a big one, right? That's too, since we were in the same Toastmasters group, Joel. Every speech you give is evaluated, right? Sometimes you get the feedback that makes you feel good. Sometimes you get feedback that does not feel good. Sometimes you get critical feedback that feels good. Sometimes you get great feedback that does not feel good. So so you just go through this whole learning experience of how to receive feedback and how to discern the good feedback from the bad feedback. So that's one big part. I mean, it can use it for business, use it for dating. You need to get feedback and you need to learn how to deal with it. So over 7 years of being evaluated pretty much every single week, right? Because every role and every speech gets feedback at a Toastmasters meeting. So that was a very unexpected life skill that I think has made me a much better overall person, right? Because we sometimes get unsolicited feedback, right? And now I'm much better skilled to deal with it. And sometimes when it doesn't feel good, I'll be like, no, that's just useless feedback. So you become very good at this relationship between you and your critics.
What are some of your most favorite memories of Toastmasters?
By far, the biggest one was meeting my first girlfriend.
Mm.
That was a very unexpected result, right? So I won't name the club where we met because I definitely wanted to protect her privacy because we are not in a relationship any longer. But meeting her, I mean, she was my first girlfriend. The way we met, the first date, the whole 8 months was just a dream come true, right? So that was by far the biggest win. That was the first, and I think that really set me on the path of becoming a dating coach for women, because Toastmasters, I was part of a few different clubs, right? So I gave a lot of very deeply personal speeches on dating and my failures. And that actually works to build up a very deep level of trust with people in general. You just trust people who are willing to share their failures. So that was the first one, meeting her. The second one was a big speech I gave at the Vancouver Convention Center on October 20th, 2018. That was on the topic of honesty in intimate relationships. And that was great because it really challenged me. It challenged me on so many levels, on just working with a coach, getting feedback from a panel, right? Similar to what we just spoke about, giving your speech to many different crowds, getting really confused during the process. Oh, I don't know if I should give this speech. Am I ready to give this speech? You have the feeling of being an imposter, right? And but I was really satisfied with the final speech, and there's a YouTube video of that speech. So to me, it was a very good real world result, right? So now you're not in the safety of a Toastmasters room where it's safe, it's all good. Now this is this is a big crowd. There were 350 people there, right? So it was a very good real world result. Yeah, so those two, I would say, my first girlfriend and the speech.
Awesome. I want to be cognizant of time, but do you have time for a couple more questions? Because I really do want to get into your Facebook Lives.
Do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I definitely do, Joel.
So you've done I think a couple challenges. You did I think it's 100. I don't know. There's a lot of Facebook Lives I've seen on your feed. What prompted you to do those?
The first one was marketing. So I'm sure you know the challenge of marketing your product or service, right? I think that's 50% or more. One of that's a big reason why most entrepreneurs fail, is because they just don't take marketing seriously, right? You could be the best dating coach in the world, but if no one knows you, you'll still be broke. Right? So I was like, you know what? Women need to know this, and the whole challenge of the Facebook Lives was to share my best content through video. I was like, you know what? I have this time because I'm stuck home. Why not do these Facebook book Lives? So the main things I learned from them was, one, to just the power of pressing play, right? Because sometimes I didn't know what I was going to speak about, but I was like, you know what? I have committed to this challenge, and sometimes it was just as simple as trusting that I would figure out what would come through. And so some of my Facebook Lives would be, I would hit record, and I would start off with, today is Friday, March 12th, right? It's super basic. But then, I would start talking about something that was relevant, right? So I think I learned a whole lot about trusting that the creative flow shows up once you have taken that step to hit the record button and not before. So you could see creativity as waiting. Are you willing to hit record? Once you do, then I will show up, and not before. So that was a huge thing. Yeah, that was a big one. And then I created so much content that I have at least 5 to 10 courses that I now want to create. So that will take me a few more years to get those courses done.
Was it tough to be consistent? Because I think for me, one of the most challenging parts would be to, like, I don't really feel like it today, or I don't want to do it, even though it is you're right, it's a pretty simple, you just hit play and you do it. But there's there's all that fear and anxiety. I don't have anything to say. It wouldn't be too bad to skip a day. Did you have any of that come up, or were you confident enough that you were able to just hit record and know that something would come out and it would be okay?
Yeah, I think I had done so many 30-day challenges by that point. I pretty much knew that I would make it through the first 30 days, right? So that was a path that I knew could be done, because doing 30-day challenges is also a skill.
Mhm.
So I knew that some prior planning. So I had planned out when I wanted to get them done by, and they were to-do list on my daily checklist.
Mm.
So that's one simple way to actually increase your success is to just have it on your daily to-do list, right? And for me, I made it pretty simple. I was like, I have to speak for a minimum of just 5 minutes. Simple. So
Mm.
as long as I speak for 5 minutes, that's fine, right? So you, depending on what your skill level is with 30-day challenges, make sure to define it well, right? So your brain has some specific measures to reach, right? So now once I hit that minimum 5 minutes, I was now way more relaxed because I had got the video for the day done. So once the first 30 days passed, then I was like, you know what, let's see how far I can go. And I went up to 109 days, 109 days, which to me was pretty good,
Mm.
And I stopped because they did not get the traction, right? I was not getting so many views
Mhm.
and as many questions uh, from women. So I was like, you know what, this was good, but a big part of challenge is knowing when to stop.
Mm.
Is knowing when to stop. So right, if you're not feeling it, and if you want getting the bang for your buck or for your time invested, then it means you should stop and rethink what you're doing.
Mm. I still think 107 days. That's very impressive. So
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
I, I want to wrap it up with one last question, and this is a question I ask all my guests, and
All
that
right.
is, what is your favorite book or a book that you like to gift a lot?
My favorite book, I guess, in terms of impact. Okay, so I mean, I could name like 20 for
Yeah,
you,
it's a
but I
common
guess
problem.
I guess the book that made the biggest practical impact on my life was the book by my dating coach. The book is called Mode One. Mode One.
Mm.
Let the women know what you're really thinking.
Mm.
Let the women know what you're really thinking. It really changed my entire mindset, my strategy of dating. As yeah, so that's one. I mean, it's not well known. I'd be surprised if any of your listeners has heard of this book. But in terms of having the biggest impact, yeah, that would
Uh,
be my main one.
and what was your coach's name again?
Uh, Alan Roger Curry,
Okay.
Alan,
Gotcha.
Alan Roger Curry.
Okay. Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
link that in the show notes.
sounds great, Joe.
All right. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for being on the show. Was really a pleasure. So much fun to reconnect with you. So much great information. No matter where you are in your life, I think that you had, yeah, so much good stuff to say and so many good takeaways. For people who want to reach out to you, who perhaps want to hire you, where's the best way to get in contact with you?
I would say the best two ways would be through LinkedIn or Facebook. I'll send you the links to both those profiles. I'm yeah, don't have a website just yet. That's in the works, but my Facebook and LinkedIn would be the best ways.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again for being on the show.
Same here, Joel. And I would end with podcasting is a skill too. And this is one of the this is one of my very first ones. Yeah, I have not done many, so thank you so much for your invite and for your very thoughtful questions and for holding the space for me. Yeah, I think you did that really well.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to Publishing for Profit. Please like and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.